Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. My name's Jason Meyer, and this morning we're going to be looking at a few fish taking a swim in a pond. That'll be our first painting, and the second painting we're going to be looking at an interior table scene. So, I hope everybody had a good couple of days break and is ready to get back to work. I'm ready to get back to the drawing. I've been working in the studio and getting everything set up. We are not quite ready to get back into our afternoon session. So this week's schedule will be our live shows will be 8 a.m. Morning Jumpstart, what you're watching right now. As I said, the afternoon will be canceled right now. We might have some later in the week. We'll see how the week plays out. But we will be going live with Masterworks every night this week at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Times, where we look at paintings of the masters. Okay, and we'll continue that through Friday. Come January or Monday, we're working on a new schedule right now, so our live schedule and our whole year schedule will change just a little bit. But as soon as we have that, we'll keep you updated. But in the meantime, are you guys ready to go? Should we get right into the art? I think so. I'm ready to get some art done. Let's bring the iPad into the mix. Okay. So far, so good. So I think you should be very happy with this. One of the things that I like the most, which can be a little hard to see, is the unevenness of that dark water. Right? I really like the way you're handling that to this point. It's coming and going. It's not even. It's varietied. You know, I don't feel like a fence builder got in there and got a hold of that background. So kudos to you. That's not always easy to do. And your forms are looking good as well. Let's see. So good. I do too. I'm looking at them anyway, so I'm glad you guys like to come along. Welcome, Claudia. Welcome to the show. Okay, so I feel like a lot of good things are happening in here. So let's look at what's next now. What's next? Oh, and Barbara's here. Woman of the hour. Good to see you. Hope you had a good little break. Although I know with young ones, there are no really breaks, so... So, Barbara, I don't know if you heard the whole thing, but I'm very happy with your water at this point, the background. I love how it's varied, not solid, yet it still reads as the dark in there. So that's working really, really well so far. So far. Everyone, it's beautiful, Barbara. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, so, but these guys are in water, so how are we going to give that effect? And I don't know how you feel, but I feel like now you should have a pretty good feeling of where things are and kind of the form of things, and we can mess with that a little bit. But now it's time to, what's the technical term? Get jiggy with it, right? Get jiggy with it. What do I mean by that? Well, let's see here. Let us see. Miss Cindy Myers in the house. Figuratively and literally. So when we've got the water, what you're going to want to do is get some uneven edges. You see how that water occasionally invades? And it's not easy. It's a little bit back and forth. But that'll be a little bit of the water effect, and then the same thing is going to happen kind of with the fish color. some of it will spill out and echo. That seems like a little better size there, right? So it's not so even. And again, this is a little rough here. You want to be careful. It's very easy to become a fence builder doing these things. And for those of you who don't know, a fence builder just means making the same mark over and like slats in a fence. This is this one. So you're gonna need variety of shape and things there. And I actually don't like that so much. And let me tell you why I don't like it. I don't like it because those initial marks I made seem too large. And maybe we could fix that later and cut it down, but let's just fix it right now. Let's take those off. Let's go down a little bit. Whoops. Let's go darker first. And what you have to avoid too is, again, just getting dark or light spots anywhere. You want to try to connect that in to the underneath. And similarly, like right here, one of the things I see, you see how lined up that is right there? We want to watch that. And I know, trust me, I know it's difficult because I can see you doing a little bit of that, but it's funny how these lines will just sneak right in on us. Okay, so almost just a little bit more of that. Okay, and then what you want to watch as you're doing that is make sure that it still feels like fish. If it gets too weak and wobbly, it won't feel like fish anymore. Yeah, I think this is very cool, and I think Barbara's doing a great job. So, Barbara, if you have any questions or anything at this point, go ahead and ask. I'm going to look for another minute or two, but it takes about 45 seconds for you to see what I'm seeing and then be able to respond and get back to me. So we'll give you a little time. Yeah, I think mainly that's the main thing I see at this point. And again, we want to do a little bit of it with everything, right? Underwater, just a little bit of sparkle, but you want to keep that spirit going back and forth. And then sometimes what will even happen is kind of over here on its own, you'll see just so let's work on this just a minute. Let's work on this just a minute and see. I might make most of the inside of that mouth dark too. I think that might help. Check it out. I mean, we don't want it to become Jaws or anything, so we got to watch that. And what can make it hard is, you see my marks almost look the same when we compare them to the variety of your water back here. And so we don't want just lines of marks on our on the fish. Let's see. I still feel like the middle fish. Barbara says, I still feel like the middle fish to be above water. Oh, like at least want to get that feeling of depth. Okay, so you want the middle fish out of the water. Okay, okay. All right, thank you for saying. So what we did here, that's what we would you want to do then on the other two fish for sure. And you've got some like going there. And so you've got the right idea. Here I don't know if we were quite as successful. So do some of that there. And then for the middle fish to be out of the water. Out of the water. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Well, basically what you'll do then is he won't necessarily be interrupted with the water like I was doing because he's outside of it. But what happens when fish jump out of the water? Okay, so I want to do we somehow have to show that he's above the water, right? So how are we going to do that? So let's go to a blank page for a second and just quickly review how that might happen. So again, if we have anything on the ground, it's got a shadow, right? If something's above the ground, it'll still have the shadow, but the shadow will be away from it, right? So that gives us space, showing space, versus the shadows connected to the ball. Okay? But we're in water, and water doesn't necessarily have a cast shadow like that. But what we can do, let's just say that this fish is jumping up out of the water, right? Something like that. Then what we could do now, again, of course, we're looking from up top, right? And I've moved us around to the sides to illustrate that there's space between the fish and the water. And so what we might do now is take color. Let's just say, for instance, there's some color on the fish, and maybe show some reflection of that in the water, again with space in between. Okay, so that's one idea. And then the other idea is I'm going to make, I've already used, well, we'll use light blue. I've already used blue, and I don't want to, but we'll use like this kind of blue. Now the water's dark, but for this sake, we're going to use that. Also, when this fish jumps up, what happens? There's some water, right, spilling off or splashing out. And so those sorts of actions too can help indicate that that fish is out of the water. So that's all great and dandy, Jason, but how do we show that looking this way? Okay, so let's get back to the painting and consider that problem. Yeah, so just for clarity's sake, why don't we put a little orange color here. And I want to do this again just for clarity right now. But if this out of the water fish, say, had some color spots on it, right, with white, then what I might do is, right, we would be seeing underneath, not on top, or that would be what would be on the water. And you wouldn't want to do the same, would you? How would you show that it's a reflection? Well, we'll go a little darker, richer on this one. And then also the nature of the shape can make a big difference as well. Then again, that what we want to show as well is that water. I'm just going to give it this color for right now, so hopefully it's obvious. You know, where is he coming out of the water at? Is it back here or something? Then again, let's indicate a disturbance in that water there. And then also make sure you show some like water in the air almost falling off of him, right? Dripping him, her, it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So, yeah. So, Janie says they're really starting to look dimensional, Barbara, especially the middle one. Yes, middle fish is out of water. Other two are inside. So, we've got that right. Okay. What if his tail swept downward to indicate him coming out of the water, too? You know, I was wondering kind of that same thing. I'm wondering if some of it's not part gesture. And maybe we should go to a blank page for this again. So your fish's gesture like that, but then on top of that, we're looking at it, and so it looks a little bit like this. But I'm wondering, right, if this was the, oops, not drawing a very good fishtail. Fishtail here. Let's see. So what would that look? Yeah, that straight above is difficult. Is difficult. So let's see here. Let's see here. What if we took, yeah, so what that might look like then is, it would kind of depend whether you want the head up or down. But what if the head was down? And so he's doing this sort of thing. You know, part of it's figuring that movement, but again, we're going to be looking up above, so how will that look? Well, even if it is kind of like this, what's happening? Well, this is close to us, right? Because that's coming up, and then that would be receding down away from us, and down away from us there too. And again, it doesn't have to be even, right? Maybe the fish head is up here and the fish tail is way down there, and then you'd have your unevenness. So what would that translate to? What would that translate to? Yeah, it's a tricky little problem, isn't it? A tricky little problem. So what I'm thinking about now is there some minor adjustments we can make on this rather than redoing the whole thing? You know, that was one thing I was considering too, but I thought Barbara said that she wanted, let's see here. Two are inside. I still like the middle fish to be above water, at least a foot above. Want to get that feeling of depth. Okay, that's what we were missing right there. And so that feeling of depth, Barbara, so all these are good ideas. All these are good ideas. And I love this because it shows that you're actively participating in trying to solve these problems. And that's how you're working out those artistic muscles, even if this isn't your painting and you never touch it. by just mentally going through, oh, what could we do? What could we do? What could we do? That's the workout you could get every morning. All right, so let's go through a couple of these solutions. And then, Barbara, you could pick any one that you want, the one that went with your vision the best. So one of them was saying that the tail and the head's out of the water, and then we're swooping underwater here. And then what you could do is show disturbance on the water here and disturbance on the water here. And again, kind of mess those edges up with water-like, and let this and that be a little cleaner because it's out of the water. And then you could also show water dripping off of each of these if you wanted. A little bit, or one, you know, whatever it takes. So that's one. But if you wanted this thing to really feel like depth, Barbara, which you indicated earlier, I'm going to go back to a blank page for a second. So the problem is it's stretched out, right? And if we're seeing this much of the tube, if we really want a sense of depth, and remember, we're looking above, right? Right now we're looking at the side. What we want to do is take this end and turn it up so that if we're looking from the side, because as I understand it, what'll happen is this will show depth. And so maybe it's just this that you're fighting with, the length of that, right? So that would look like, if we turn this thing up, then from our angle, like the fish head would be here and the tail would be down here because this thing is stacked up, right? Going around, 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 instead of laid out. Does that make sense? So what happens is this ends up being the fish head. So if he's coming straight out of the water, see his mouth like that, eyes like that, right? So we're seeing much more of this, and then his tail would be more like that, right? You see how he's stacked up like that? So both of those are solutions you could use. You know, you'd have to kind of decide which one you want to do, but those would be good. Does that help you out, Barbara? Does that help? Thank you guys for all the comments and suggestions. And again, this is perfect. It's just like brainstorming. What could I do? What if? What if? What if? And that's the vision that I want to build with you guys. Because when you get into these problems or something's not really feeling right, you know, well, first off, what are you trying to do? Right? Try to be clear on that. And then second off, is that how you've drawn things, or do we need to change things to indicate that, or to change that a little bit? All right. Okay, so Barbara says, yes, I was about to add color and ripples and darker background under the middle fish. Okay, we'll have to head and tail her out of the water. The midsection is slightly underwater. Swirls. Yes, this helps. Oh, okay, so that was earlier, and this helps. All right. All right, Barbara. Well, very good. So work on it, and I'd love to see it again whenever you have time to do it. But it looks like you're having fun with this one, and I'm seeing the results, too. We're seeing the results, so good job. Good job there, yeah. And again, I can't overemphasize, this looks like nothing. Uh-oh, why are you guys not seeing the iPad? Well, you're seeing it, but it's not doing, oh, it won't allow me to blow up. I'm trying to blow this up and shrink it, it won't let me. Anyway, I was trying to show you the background, and that varied background of the water, I'm so impressed with that, right? I think that, and why it's difficult is because once you overdo it, you can't really get that feeling back. You got to do it in other ways. So great job, great job, great job, great job. Keep going, kiddo. I'm having, oh, that, all right. So to see paintings get better and then to hear that you're having fun on top of that, man, who could not win at that? Yeah, Claudia says yeah, and great job, Barbara, from Cindy. All right. How about an interior this time? So good job, Barbara. Yeah, this is, thank you for sharing that. I've learned much from painting in black and white. Even now, I like to go back and paint in black and white sometimes because it's amazing kind of the little things that you can forget and remember, or, oh, I can do this, I can do that, right? Just stay fresh, stay fresh. All right, so Wendy's here watching but unable to sign in. So this was great, and I have the reference image here, which is going to help me out quite a bit because we haven't really talked about this painting. Have not talked about this painting. So let's talk about what I see that's going on here, and some of the good points that's happening, and then where we might go from there. So for those of you who don't see the reference, let me help you out a little bit, which would be everybody except me. There's a rose sitting on top of this dark. All right, fresh baked. I'm afraid to call it bread because it's probably some particular type of bread, but anyway. And we've got a glass of wine here. And then a couple of candles that are lit. I like a challenge. I like a challenge. And these holders, there's some red and gold. And then these are colorful. There's some blue, like green, yellow, stained glass candle holders. And it looks like it's soldered with, it's a gold colored solder. The solder's been colored gold. Not sure how he did that, but there's two of those here. And it looks like she's got the table going about like that. Okay. And the table's a little dark about the color of the wood, but I'm wondering, and if you can let me know, that will help. It looks here like you're considering a tablecloth or something on top. So let me know that, because what I'd like to do is I like to kind of see the elements we have to play with here and then talk about some of our options. A Christmas, see, look, you guys, looks like a delicious Christmas roll. Doesn't that sound so much better than a loaf of bread? Why couldn't I? A Christmas roll. Okay, pardon me. So give me just a second to have a look at this, and let's come up some ideas. And if you're able to let Cindy know, Wendy, if that's a tablecloth on there, or your general thoughts or ideas about this, that would help me. Because again, I can generate all kinds of ideas and go running in my own way, but if you have a thought, let's work with that. So the first thing I'm going to think about is some of these colors that I want to do while we're waiting to hear from Shala. Am I saying that right? Shala? Yes, it does. All right. So there we go. Something like that. And there are some rose petals here. So, and I guess that's one of the reasons we need to know what's happening here, right? And one of the things I would think about was how I would like this to show up. In my mind, I think it's going to be most effective this is going to have like a darker tone. Of course, it'll have highlights and stuff, but darker. And then our rose is light, right? Could we get this to be in between? Right, so our dark petals will come off of the medium tablecloth. Even if it's white, we can play it down, and then the white petals will show up, and the beautiful color and richness of the bread would show up. And then I think we're going to need to tie this color in, which looks like what you were doing with that. So then the question is, my question is, okay, so do we make that dark? Do we want a dark note there, or do we want a light note? And if we're going to have candles in there, we're going to want to get to those. We're going to want to get to those. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, you don't have, it's not necessary to set it all up. I was just wanted to make sure for your idea, right? Because the idea is what's the important thing, and I don't want to go against it. So there's a tablecloth, and she's trying to show the glow of light and how it hits the objects. And yeah, I'm afraid to even pronounce it. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. Chala too. So the bread's okay. So we are off and running then. So we have the white petals, the white rose and the petals on top of the rich bread. And so let's make that tablecloth, we can make it look white, quote unquote, but the value of it's going to be darker than our white rose and the white petals, but lighter than the challah, the bread, and then this wine. I think what we might do with this wine is maybe move it down here, right, lower on the table, and so it just sticks up here, because I like the unevenness of that. Right, I know this is uneven here, but with it so far up, it starts feeling a little bit like, one of my teachers used to call that a field goal, like a football goal post. Right, just the, and, well, I mean, this would go directly to the concept, really, but something to think about, right? And me having this all go up to the light. But, maybe you want this more prominent as part of the celebration. So, I see a couple of options here. See a couple. No, I really, I might move it a little closer so there's not quite so much, so that this is more spacious. This is more kind of nothingness here. And the reason I would want that is I think if we start a little lower and a little closer, then what we can do is kind of come right through here and up this. And Wendy, this may be, I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk to you one-on-one very much. So I'm unfamiliar with your level of experience. Pronounced K, uh-oh. I knew I was pronouncing it right. All right. Chala. Anyway. We'll work on my enunciation later. But one of the first things I always start with is movement. From this lay-in, it seems that you have enough experience that we can talk about this. And even if you've never heard about it, it's a different way. Rather than just values, we want to think about how we're going to move the viewer's eye through the painting, right? And so the movement becomes part of the theme and feeling of the painting, right? You can think about it like an arch of a storyline, in a novel. We don't see the whole thing at once, but we start and it reveals itself, right? That's another way of looking at a painting, and the movement's a little bit like that. So I hope that makes sense. If not, feel free to, let me know and we'll talk about it. But with those little movements, the other thing I would think about is I would try some overlap with these things. They feel just a little bit the same. And I know they're different and they're very unique pieces, but I feel like if, for instance, if the wine's even slightly moved over like that, and it just means it might sit lower, right? Whatever it is. If that's moved down there, and if we take this and maybe start it over here and overlap it with that to where these are a little closer. And I don't know if it's part of the decoration, but visually it would be more interesting to stagger these flames a little bit. So in other words, if we want to move this whole thing from here to about here, so that's going to bring the candles a little closer, and maybe this candle here is a little bit higher than that candle. Maybe this is burned a little bit more. And also maybe this is in front, so that this one back here is just slightly smaller too. So again, they're just not lined up like that, but we're kind of building them based on that. One can be in front of the other, and one can be behind, and then we can just exaggerate that size. And I think that will be really, really nice. And then so I think this is what's bothering me a little bit. I think that's what's bothering me a little bit. It's just real close to the edge, and look, I know it's rounded, but it's still pointing us this way a bit. So we're going to want to watch that. And then the other part we have to watch is that this doesn't get too fast, right? Like, woo! I roll it. Whoa! My stomach's you know what I mean? You can get it moving too fast through there. It's a little bit early because once we have the values and the lights, these things will read a little bit differently. But just contour-wise, I'm looking at that. Now, the right placement of these roses will interrupt that, right? And that might be nice to have maybe one of these rose petals laying up, again, to break that plane there. And let's see. The other thing is you want to paint this from a single light source. Maybe that was happening in here, but there looks like there's lots of ambient light too. And so what I'm wondering, right, because the direction of the shadow, if the light comes in from here, what that gives us is the ability to put a little shadow here. Right, that shadow. And I kind of like that as a counterforce to this movement here. Again, it's your painting and you're going to have to decide. It's kind of counterintuitive Usually we want to go with it. And could we go the other way? Right? In other words, there we are. In other words, could we throw the shadow? See, if we throw the shadow like that, right, I'm just kind of thinking here, just kind of thinking out loud, playing around with it. That might work too, right? Because what's going to happen, and that's kind of what you've indicated here anyway, because the shadows would be on this side, right? So this would be more shadowed, and then this would be less shadowed down this way. Yeah, why don't we go with that? Or again, this is your, it's always your painting, so you're the one that needs to decide. There we go. But if we move that over like that, and let's see, so we've got all the warmth of the bread and everything, and then you've got the coolness of those candle holders. So I might go for a cool gray. Meaning maybe some in that bluish gray range for my background. And the reason I'm thinking of something in this direction would be I'm trying to think of what would set off the color of the bread, right? And then the other thing is with this being similar, I don't know if I'd put the candles that high to the edge of the canvas. We'd have to think about that. I'd probably want them a little bit more inside. But if we went with something like that, then what I'm seeing is like your bread is already warm, and then what would the tablecloth be? Now the question is going to be, is that too light? Is that too light? Well, we can answer that by seeing if it'll hold that warm rose. Could we get rose petals on here that'll stand off? Well, we could. I feel like we could have even more drama if we darken down that white tabletop even more. All right, so my enunciations, I know. I'm visual, what can I say? This process fascinates me. It's so much more intense than actually. Well, I mean that's good. That's good that it's intense. It means you're participating, and so fantastic. Okay, so let's play with that tabletop value now. So let's just go back to what we had. Okay, can we drop that and gray it? And even warm it a little bit. Right. So the only question I'm asking right now, not if this looks like a white tabletop or anything like that. The only question I'm asking is this going to make my bread and my rose and those things look good? And to me, you see that red or that rose will pop off a little more, right? And then that bread will be a little quieter with that dark against the table, but the highlights will pop. And then for our background, do we need to change our background? How would we change our background now? Right, maybe a little darker and warmer. So the question is, do we want the background darker than the white tablecloth or lighter? And I don't know. You know, I don't know what you have in mind. I don't know about your concept of the painting, the mood you want. But let's take a look at each one in turn and see what it might do to the painting. Right? And the reason you might want a dark background, and I say might because this is up to you, is that we can really make those candles glow against that darker background. Whereas if instead of going darker than this, if we go lighter than that, and again, let's go a little bit towards the warm. Why? Because that's going to appear more transparent. Okay, that's way too light. Maybe. I think we can go down a little bit more. But do you see I'm always testing, right? I don't assume I know. I know the direction it needs to go in and about the amount. Okay, so that, right? And look how different that is from that first mark that I made. So those little changes matter. And most people don't take the time to find those measures. And if we find the measures, that will what makes it better. So although we could get some flames against this, they won't seem as some candlelight, I'm saying just flames, against this, it won't seem nearly as bright as against that darker wall. Right? Do you see how it's going to be harder to get those candles? Right? Anything. You know, and for that reason, and for me, again, this is up to you and the feeling you want. I would probably go with the darker wall, the darker background. Because again, those candle flames and then the rose. But that's, again, that's my taste. You might want it a little more even and a little more colorful. I don't know. So, all right, if you have questions, Wendy, let me know. Again, my intention on these days in these programs isn't necessarily to impress you guys with good-looking paintings or fixing your paintings or whatever, but to talk about the ideas and what's next and, you know, some of the problems and how we might solve them. Because in all honesty, I'm not interested in finishing this painting or helping you with this painting for this painting's sake. But I'm very interested in looking at this and looking at these problems for the sake of your growth as an artist. Growth as an artist. And if we just stick to that track, the good paintings will come naturally, right? They don't all come out good. Some come out good, some don't. But again, that artistic growth, that artistic development, stick with that, and then over time, these paintings will come out. So put more, I encourage people to put more emphasis on their artistic growth than any individual painting. One thing it does is it takes the stress out of every painting, especially as you get close to a finish. Because if your growth is more important to you than that painting, well, even if something goes a little squirrely or it doesn't get right, it's better than we were 3 months ago. And better, and better, and better. And you're more fully participating in the painting. So that's my approach. Let's see. Great contrast as usual. Yay for. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. All right, Wendy, I hope this helped. Again, I'm going to wait just another second to see if you have any last minute questions or anything. So for today, Monday, I'll be back tonight for a look at Masterworks. And what I'll be doing in the meantime is I'm actually going to be working on the programs for next month or next year and our schedule. I want to get that. We've got a lot of new tools. We've got this new community, and we want to see how we can make the most of it, especially like why so many of us are still at home. Thank you. I love. Yeah. I really want to show you guys how to work your own way through here. You know, and it's really selfish. I'm glad you guys think I'm so nice, but this is just all for me, because what I want is just a community of friends that we can get together and talk about and share ideas and grow as artists and have fun. Have fun. This was great. Thanks for starting our days off. Thanks, sweetie. Okay, guys. Well, like I said, Wendy, if you have any questions, get them to Cindy, and we'll see if we can't get them answered the next day or two. And as you develop this, I'd love to work with you. And as for all of you guys in class, as you have your paintings ready, send them in. I can't promise you I'll get to them in the next day or so, but I'll do my best. If they start piling up, what we'll do is we'll have another mid-session, midweek check-in or something, and we'll do a bunch of them. All right. So, do-si-do, we'll get rid of that. And for now, I'm going to send you guys off to the studio or wherever you're going. Get some work done. Have a good time. Be beautiful. Be beautiful and look for the beauty. All right? Have a good one, everybody. Love you guys.